when you're looking at planning a garden, you needn't go much farther than look at this particular garden with its features. We've got a lovely feature of the pond, the archway, which has been clothed temporarily this time with sweet peas. Roses are going to go up there eventually. You've got the heathers there with the lovely matted carpet. You've got the extreme colour, but the toning effect of other plants as well. This is a well cared for and a really well planned garden, and I would enjoy living here. Most people have got to cope with hedges that don't belong to you. And there's not a lot you can do about it. You could end up by having just a blank green area the full length of your garden. But look what's happened here. Piece of trellising, nailed to substantial posts with the background of the hedge. And the use here of baskets fastened to the back of the trellis. And the new petunia varieties, these are the perennial petunias that you can take from cuttings. They call them the sapphire varieties of petunias. And these are not winter hardy. Take them inside and take cuttings and bring them through for next year. But doesn't that add just a new dimension to this particular area? And I like the use here of the Yorkshire flagstones hitting off the lawn, and this lovely colour that we've got with the Mexicana ivy leaf geranium, and they need taking from cuttings in a few weeks' time as well. Got a Mahonia here, just breaking up, and that'll be in flower, and that'll have lovely yellow flowers. I hear the sound of water. I don't think there's anything that brings life into a garden like the sound of water. I'm going to go investigate this pool. The sound of water in the garden adds a total new concept to a garden. And to see running water and a little fountain there, I think it makes a garden a really exciting place. And in here we've got some lovely pond life. I can see an old frog swimming about. We've got the pond cypress grass here. Nice bunch of ordinary reeds that you see in any garden, in any park's pond or any lake. The yellow flower in the foreground is the creeping form of the calthea, which is the pond marigold or marsh marigold. Some more cypress grasses and water arum there. And in the background, the serenity of the fern and the ivies dropping down. We've also got a Cotoneaster horizontalis, which is classed as the herringbone Cotoneaster. Herringbone and ponds go together. A lovely feature at the back of this pond is the rock feature based on limestone. And the pond is lined with a proper butyl pond liner, making certain that whenever you're working near to your pond, that you don't spike the liner because you'd then lose all the water. Some people would probably prod around there and probably try to remove bits, but you've got to be very careful. I think this is a really lovely feature, and this plant here again associates with the pond. This is an Acer palmatum dissectrum, atropurpureum. I remembered it today. Right in the background of the garden shed, placed in a lovely position because you don't see it. A garden shed isn't all that attractive. And this bush is totally masking that, where the greenhouse is in the foreground with all the lovely plants inside it. I think this is a gem of a feature. And I've seen something over there I'd like to have a look at as well now. This is a lovely feature. What has happened here, we have created artificial height to the whole border. The whole border will be flat. I'll go in a little bit and just show you. There is a post inside there, And nailed to the top of the post, or fastened to the top of the post, is a basket. One down below, which looks as though the post has gone right through the basket, giving this two-tier effect, like a big lollipop. And lovely colour in there, with begonia semperflorens, pansies, lots of busy lizzies. A garden like this needs a lot of care and attention. I would think at least 3 hours a night goes into this, because there's not many dead heads about, although I've seen one up here. If antirrhinums are allowed to make these seed pods all the time, they will just stop flowering. So it's essential to actually deadhead them and get these dead heads out of the way. I like the idea of this raised bed. Obviously, the pathway, it just works nicely into the stonework. I would imagine that the soil in this area was very shallow, and that's the reason that he's built it up and been able to create a lovely area here for begonia semperflorens again, and the lovely silver dots there, Cineraria maritima. This garden is an absolute delight. It's quite difficult when you newly erect a rose arch to get the rose in the first instance to climb up, so you've got to mask the arch and give it, you know, other cover. The rose here eventually, of course, will climb right over the top, but it does take a year or two to get them established, because you need all the growths coming from the bottom. So what's happened here is he's put some sweet peas in, and very craftily, very crafty indeed, he may be able to get himself a meal as well from here. There is a runner bean growing up through the archway with its lovely red flowers there. But sweet peas, I think that variety is a white one called Gilly, and it just has that lovely pleasing effect. And in the top is created there a basket effect with petunias and busy lizzies again to add nice colour to it, and baskets going down the other side. And I like the way that he's trying to hide the stark cladding on this garage side by using ivy. That variety is, I believe that one is Golden Heart or Jubilee, and against it there is a hydrangea, Hydrangea petiolaris. Just sticks to anything, and it has lovely white flowers, just starting to come into flower now. These planters, I think, are very effective, creating height. And down here, look, there's a nice bed of heathers, some just coming into flower. And I noticed these here, these are the autumn flowering heathers, and some here winter flowering ones. But heathers are very useful because they've got this two-toning effect of colour. They've got the flowers, and they've also got the coloured foliage effect. The continental way of using planters on pathways, in glazed pots and glazed urns, you know, hostas growing there. Even sempervivums there in a pot. Oh, this looks nice. Lilies. Yes, the scented type. And look how they've used a bathtub with nice ivies coming out there, and dahlias in a bathtub. And the reason that bathtub has been used for dahlias is there's sufficient depth there. I wondered if he's left the taps on to water. Oh no, you're being silly, Joe. And here, I don't think I've ever seen a hosta in a planter as good as that one. Nice glazed planter there. And the hosta, very fit. Hostas actually often suffer from slug damage, and by having them in a planter like this, there's no problem. That's absolutely beautiful, and it just creates that toning down effect of all the colour that's in the background. If this garden hadn't got foliage forms like the hosta, and like the spotted laurel up there, and like the foliage forms of the heathers, it would have been one mass of colour, and that would have been too much. I think the effect in this garden is just the balance of colour No straight edges to the lawns. There's no straight edge to the garden, yet it's a long, narrow garden, but looking at it, there's lots of corners, and I think that is very, very, very clever garden design. I like this garden very much. A lot of work goes into it. As I said before, I bet at least 3 hours a night. The importance of a bed like this is for busy folk who want something to look pleasing all the time, yet they don't want to do a lot of maintenance. On here, there's not a great deal of maintenance to do, but let me show you. This is bark chippings, and there's about a 3-inch layer of bark chippings all the way over this bed. What it does, to start with, it looks good. It's a back cloth for a border like this. But what it also does, it gives a nice cool root run in dry weather conditions, and it suppresses the moisture. If I was to scrape the soil in the rest of the garden at this moment in time in July, when it has been hot for about a fortnight to 3 weeks, the top of the soil is dry, where under here, under this mulch, it's nicely moist. And so the plant is thriving on the moisture. I still think it's a bit on the dry side, and that's why we're actually giving them a really good drink. When I say a good drink, it's no good just going with the watering can and giving them a little sup. They want the hose pipe there trickling for a couple of hours or so. But the mulch, to me, plays a really important part. And this bark chippings is a very, very, very good mulch. I've seen something over here that interests me. The spiders have been very busy. The webs everywhere. Now they're only here for one reason, and they're here to eat. And I think that what they're picking up on here will be all the little tiny mites that are working. You've got the red spider mite, which will actually be working in amongst here, creating and living on this particular plant. So the predator is coming in to actually catch them as they drop off, and also other flies that are about as well. So that's another way that insects can help us greatly in the garden, acting as predators and keeping down other pests. From time to time, you've got to actually spray conifers because of the midges and because of the red spider. Because if you don't and you get a bad infestation, defoliation can happen very prematurely. Look at this little chap, a proper gardener's friend. If I could get more of these in the garden, I wouldn't want to control or need to control the slugs, because he'd eat them all. Very, very important little animal, that, and one that I'd like to see a lot more of in my garden. As I've been working through the plants this afternoon, I've noticed lots and lots of ladybird larvae, and they are really a gardener's friend. So I'm just going to keep the spray away at this moment in time, because the spray would probably kill the larvae and the young ladybirds. And I know, with the appetite that they've got for greenfly, they will do all my spraying for me. Not exactly spraying, but they'll scoff the lot. At this time of the year, a watchful eye must be kept on pests and diseases. And I've noticed this plant here, which has actually got caterpillars all over it. And these are the caterpillars from the cabbage white butterfly. Caterpillars and nasturtiums go together, and these will defoliate that plant in no time. And one way that I get rid of them, I actually give the plant a good shake and they fall onto the ground, or I just get the caterpillars off and pick them all off, and you can spot them quite easily. There's another one there, and there's one down here which I'm going to take, and I go like that, you know, squashology. The name of the game. I must go home now and wash my hands. On a nice dry, windy day when the soil surface is drying, there's nothing more satisfying than to get the garden hoe out and actually get this weed totally controlled just by shuffling through, keeping the hoe moving in dry weather conditions like this. Certainly does the garden a lot of good. It destroys all the germinating weed seedlings, all the ones that we can actually see on the top, but many more that I'm bringing to the surface as well. Just by shuffling through and keeping the hoe moving, you're actually bringing the weed seedlings to the surface, and the wind and the sun dries them up, and it does, to me, a far more satisfying job on the weed control than it does if you get the garden spray out. This is an area that we just pulled up about a fortnight ago, and this is an area that had an annual bed on it. And I know it seems a shame, but there obviously was where the nasturtiums were growing, because these are seedlings of the nasturtiums. But I'm going to be growing something totally different in here, so destroying the seedlings and the weed seed at the same time, you know, it stops things from seeding. It's really good garden hygiene, and a good trusty hoe, I think, beats all the garden sprays. That'll soon be totally dead with that weed, and the area will be really clean again and ready for either sowing or planting something else into. Sometimes we've got to resort to the chemical hoe. I don't like using lots of chemicals, but there are times when we've got to get the spray out. And there's a situation here where it's a paved area, and I could use here a total weed killer on this area. But pin your ears back, because this is where I go really serious. Whenever using any chemicals at all in the garden, follow all the safety regulations. You wear rubber gloves, if it says so, you wear a visor, and you follow it to the letter, because they don't write things on tins and bottles. You've got to be careful where you store things. You've got to be careful that you don't mix certain chemicals. So really read all about it. When spraying in the garden, try and choose a day that isn't windy, because the drift from your spray can take off and it can go onto flowers or plants very close by. So really, spraying in the garden is a very important task at times when you've got an area like this, because this will be very difficult for me to weed or hoe or kill in any other way, apart from using certain weed killers. But do follow the safety regulations. And if, for example, you use a watering can for the job with a fine rose on, make certain that that watering can is absolutely thoroughly cleaned afterwards. Otherwise, you will put the weed killer probably onto your tender plants. So maybe as well, if you do use a watering can for weed killers, it is specially used for that job. And when washing out of watering cans or things like this, do make certain that you do follow the regulations, because it's very important. For the lazy gardeners amongst us, we can actually cut down a lot of work by planting through a membrane, either made of polythene or this plastic matting coated stuff. What we do is we make certain that the ground is well prepared below, and then we take out a trench down the side, and this matting can be as large as you want it to be, but we're just demonstrating with a small strip here. So we've prepared the land, and for people who have got a problem with weeds, you can actually smother the weeds out by using this particular method. So we make a trench and we bury the matting, and all we do then is with a sharp knife, I usually make a bit of a cross slit there, And with the trowel, remove the soil. Plants like heathers grow ideal in this situation, so long as they've got the right soil conditions underneath. We remove the plant, get it in the hole, firm it well in, and then we do the same thing at the correct planting distance. And then with the trowel, the land is well prepared down below, and with the trowel we just remove sufficient soil, tap the plant out of the pot. The plant was well watered the night before, and tuck him in nicely, well firmed in. Talk to it. Big believer in talking to my plants. For watering, it would be a good idea, probably, to lay some of this flat tubing under the matting. And this is lay flat tubing that you can connect your hose pipe to. There's small perforations in the base of the tubing, and the water will dribble there and water the plants well. Or you can put this particular hose in, and this is a seep hose, and it's porous and the water just comes out, and that's connected to your pipe, so that can go under also. And to finish the whole job off and make it look reasonable, as you can then mulch the whole area over with your bark mulch, if you want to use bark, or if you want to use gravel chippings, and you need a good layer on. A bit more there. So for you gardeners who don't like weeding, this is probably the method for you. Over there we've got a super cotoneaster which is coming over the wall, and it's cascading down over the wall, and it's just breaking up the stonework again. That cotoneaster is full of red berries when it gets to probably September time. A little farther on there, down the wall, we've got a wisteria, which is again scrambling over the top and just breaking up the formation of the wall. And that is cascading in June, sort of May and June, with lovely long traces of wisteria. Underneath, hostas. It's a great idea to actually have hostas in raised beds, because hostas go together with slugs, and you can protect the raised bed area a lot easier. The slugs have got to climb up to get there, so if you put a barrier of slug tablets along the top of the wall, hopefully, you know, we're going to trap them there before they get there. In the far corner there's a lovely solanum. Solanum, of course, in the same family as tomatoes and potatoes. That is Solanum crispum. Again, coming over the wall again, and it's lovely to have walls clothed with shrubs, but still just to see a hint of the wall. And one marvellous shrub for a wall, climbing shrub, of course, is the clematis. There are clematis of all shapes and sizes, but that is one of the Montana ones that flowers in the early spring. But within this courtyard garden, we've got a multitude of different types of stonework. All the real McCoy. We've got half-round copings of sandstone. And we've got Yorkshire paving flags on the base. They're marvellous, really are a good natural stone. But in wet weather conditions, they can be very slippery, so we need to keep the moss off there. But we've got a courtyard garden there to be proud of. And in the spring of the year, amongst all the plants that we've got in here, we've got lots and lots of spring bulbs to come. I love stonework, and I love the natural stonework. It's far, far nicer than the tatty man-made bricks that we're getting today. This is the real McCoy and goes back to an antique. In certain aspects of garden design, you've got to cope with things like this. It's a lovely cherry tree, and it would be a shame to take it out. But a cherry tree like this can totally ruin a garden. For example, there's no way that a lawn would grow there successfully. So in this garden, he's coped by putting pebbles down. And it looks very attractive by having a central wheelbarrow there. Let's have a little look round and see what else he's got. This raised bed is very effective, and busy lizzies also do very well in partial shade, the shade of this tree. A lovely focal point with that lovely dot plant in the centre, taking the height up. Here we've got some nice pansies as well that are coping very well with this semi-shade. This garden actually faces east and doesn't get a great deal of sunlight. Another raised bed effect here, and I like this effect. You know, you don't need always to have a lawn in a garden. There's so much colour around here that these pebbles actually do the trick. This raised bed has got lavateria at the back, a beautiful pink flower, but coming through yellow roses, which are permanently planted. The different types of begonias, ivy coming over the stonework there, limonanthus coming over the stonework, and just to break up the harsh reality of the stone. And look at this for a focal point. I would have been pleased to have planted this. Begonias. Inside the wheelbarrow there, I noticed there's some polythene all the way around the outside edge of the wheelbarrow, and that's to stop the wood from rotting. But I've seen something down here that is well hidden from anybody. There's a lock against the barrow wheel onto a little hasp, because quite honestly, there's a valuable commodity here, and wouldn't want it to go missing. They'll pinch anything these days, won't they? Sad, isn't it? The one thing that has really impressed me in this garden, ouch, the holly is giving me a jab. The one thing that's impressed me in this garden is plant association. The association of all the plants hitting off each other, like this plectranthus. Marvellous climbing plant, hitting off this holly. Lovely combination here of the blue lobelia. Busy lizzies coming through. And look what's scrambling up there. A lovely pink rose, a climbing rose. The Helichrysum, I can hardly get my teeth around that one. Helichrysum petiolatum. Absolutely beautiful contrast with all the other colours that are in there. The wind just flowing the basket round nicely, and the plectranthus coming down. And you know, when you're making hanging baskets like this, and you've got them hung up for the season, it's a good idea early on in the season to put a couple of slug tablets in there. You may have got a slug in a plant that you plant into the basket, and they have a birthday living up there all summertime. I've seen that happen actually, so a couple of slug tablets in the basket, plenty of water, never let them dry out. It's almost a job that you've got to do every night. Step ladder out, small watering can, and plenty of plant food. Hanging baskets do enjoy being fed with high potash feed. Tomato fertiliser is absolutely ideal to keep your hanging baskets going fit and healthy through the summertime. What a beautiful welcome home this is, isn't it? You know, going towards your back door or your front door with all this colour and begonias, very extravagant colour there, and these are grown from tubers each year. And again, lovely basket there with a contrast of blue in, the petunias. Absolutely so. And look here, we're going to end on this point. Wonderful tuberous rooted begonias, a beautiful non-stop variety which keeps on going all the summertime. And what a marvellous way to hide the dustbin. Totally contained in flower, and the dustbin stuck underneath there. I really do enjoy this garden, and I think it's planned to perfection. Making a new lawn. Right. Do we use turf or do we use seed? We're going to show you both methods, and then you can find out which one will really suit you. If we're using turf, we need to get a good quality turf, but more about that in a minute. Preparation for a lawn. That lawn is going to be down probably your lifetime at your particular house. You need to make a really thorough job of it. A thorough job of the ground preparation. I keep going on about ground preparation, and this is most important. You want that lawn to survive, to grow, and not to be of any trouble. If you didn't prepare your land, dig it correctly, and put some food in there to start with, within a couple of years, you're going to have bare patches, you're going to have moss, you're going to have drainage problems, and that's no good at all. Do the job right to start with, and we've cracked it. Right. And don't rush it. Many is the time that I have seen a lorry load of soil turn up on a building site. The house has just been built. All the rubble is still there. The soil is tipped on there, levelled out, and within a matter of hours, turf is down. It looks okay, but it's never going to be right. Ground preparation. This land here was turned over a long time in advance. The land was double dug, manure put in, and allowed to settle. Gone are the days now when we use a roller to level the surface of the soil. We always used to see a roller connected to lawns, and you don't need that at all. If you prepare your land in plenty of time, you get this compactness, and this is just about right. Let's show you how to make the final preparations now for your lawn. These are better than any garden roller, and they call this process treading. The land is relatively level, but we're going to pull it down with the rake in a moment. But this is important. This area of land has already had 2 ounces to the square yard of a granular fertiliser. We used a balanced fertiliser. Balance being all the plant elements that the plant requires: nitrogen, phosphate and potash. Nitrogen makes your green leaf, phosphate makes your root development, and potash puts everything right. That's sufficient for now. Let's talk about rakes, how you can actually fill in hills and holes. You can use the back of the rake, like so. If you've got a depression, bend your back. Get your back really bent, almost on a level with the rake. And you can see that surface coming down now, and the job's a good one. The advantage of turfing a lawn is that you can more or less turf a lawn at any time of the year. We'll stick them in because I don't want the sow nose on camera. It's very important when buying turf, to buy a good quality turf, you need to probably know someone who's bought some from the stockist and know the lawn that it's actually been laid on. That's very important when you're buying turf, to buy a really good quality one, because it costs you money, so buy the best. This is in a roll, very easy to lay. When you receive the turf, if you're not going to lay it immediately, lay it out on a part of the garden, like that, and it will strike the moisture from below, and it will keep it in a nice green condition. In a roll like this, it'll last about a week, but it all dries out. Turf comes now professionally cut with a machine. You don't get a lot of soil with it. They're not going to give you half the field, are they? Soil is important to them. But this is wonderful condition, no stones at all there, and we'll be able to lay this without any problem. Right, Whenever you're laying turf, it's very important to work off boards. I've already prepared that area of land, and I don't want to have to keep re-raking it, so I put a plank down. Right. You'll just see how easy it is in a moment. And the turf will always tell you, when you look at it, you'd have thought you've got a really level area, but there's a slack place there, so just shove a little bit of soil under it. Slack place there as well. We'll just correct it like that. You can see I'm working off the plank all the time. Butt the ends up nice and tight. I will show you about that in a moment or two. That's important. Right, you move your plank. And what I will do now is just to take out that firm area where I've been on the plank with the rake. Just take out, you know, the hardness where the plank was sat. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to offset it slightly, just leaving a little bit over the end there, and I'll show you why. Put it up nicely. Make a real job of this because it's going to be down for a long, long time. Right. It's like laying bricks. You never lay bricks in straight line fashion against each other. You see, that's where I had the last joint, and I didn't want another joint to run across there. So that's why I let it go out that way a little bit. And it follows right across the plot in the same fashion. But the important thing now is to reverse the plank and put the plank onto the area that you've already turfed, and work off this area now all the time. Again, we'll rub this out. And by working off the plank, you're firming in the turf in an even fashion. So I'm going back there to offset these joints. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Never kneel on it or anything like that, because if you do, there's always going to be a depression there, and that's wrong. You want it as level as possible, and you'll find that as you work your way back, you'll move your plank, and that will give you the right amount of compaction. So you always work off planks. Very, very important. I hope you've got the message by now, because another little job I want to show you is actually where they're bonding up. You get a nice compost, very fine. I use a bit of stuff from an old grow bag. Put it on there, work it in, and then I usually rub it into the joints. And we've got an immediate lawn. Normally, I would do this on a larger scale with a birch besom. Work off the plank, a knife down, and you'll end up with a lovely straight edge. But normally, I wouldn't do this until the turf had got keyed in. So we'd leave it about a week or so, but that's how you would actually finish it off. And then, an important job that you would do, right at the end, until the turf had got keyed in, you would just mound this soil back over the edges like that. And after about 4 weeks, you would just free the soil again, and it would give you that perfect grass edge. Do we use turf or do we use grass seed? Today I'm going to sow some grass seed on an area of border that I want to get and make it into a lawn again. What sort of grass seed do we use? There are various mixtures of various prices. There are lawns for all occasions. You can have a hard-wearing grass mixture, and this hard-wearing one will be ideal for the children to play football on and people to readily walk across the lawn, and it wouldn't do it any harm at all. This is a hard-wearing mixture containing a bit of ryegrass. If you want something very special, this particular grass seed mixture is a finer grass altogether. It would make a wonderful bowling green. So if you want a really special lawn, this is the type to actually sow. But your conditions for actually use wouldn't be to play football on it. This is for a beautiful amenity lawn. And then if you've got an area where you've got a shaded area under trees, there's another mixture you can get. And this particular mixture is one that will survive in shady areas. So there are grass seed types for all occasions. Right, let's have a look at the area that we're going to prepare for actually sowing. The ground conditions are identical to the area that we prepared for turf. This has been well dug. It's been a border area that we've had bedding plants in, but we want to do away with this area now, and I'm going to eventually plant a few specimen shrubs in the area, but amongst the grass. But just for the time being, I want to grass it over. The soil conditions are good. It's all been dug over, there's been manure put in, but what I want to do now is to level the area first. So with the landscaper, you can see the conditions, the manure there, the old manures are still there nicely. I'm going to marry it right into the edge here. It's had a general fertiliser dressing, exactly like we gave to the turf area. And as I say, these landscaper rakes are very useful. It doesn't matter at all if you come onto the edge where we've had the border and into this grassed area. Right, it's coming down now. The one important feature here is to make certain that the area that we're marrying into is firm, so you can't see the joins. So I would continue the full length of the bed and get it into something like I've got this particular area here. Very satisfied with that. It's just about firm enough. And then we can start to sow. There's nothing very special with this area of grasses here, so we're going to use this hard-wearing mixture. And we said before, the advantage of seed. I'll stand on here in case I drop any. The advantage of seed over turf is that it's much cheaper. Right, let me show you. That's about an ounce of grass seed. It's an ounce to the square yard. And it's just a matter, don't get close to the ground when you're sowing it. Let it filter through the air like that. So an ounce to an ounce and a half to the square yard of a mixture like this is absolutely adequate. Now you're going to say to me, what about the birds coming and eating it? Oh well, we'll shove a few more on. But that is plenty thick enough, right? The next process is just to very, very lightly rake it in. Just rake it in. And also in the dark. I've seen people cover over a new lawn area with a sheet of polythene. Disaster. Mustn't do that at all. The sun will come out 120 degrees and then it'll go cold as well. You'll get the humidity building up and you'll get the disease called fusarium setting off when it is very, very young. If you want to cover it to stop the birds, use the garden fleece. I'm sweating a bit, it's useful stuff, is this? So to stop the birds and to just build that microclimate up underneath it, because rain will go through here, just cover that over, say, with the fleece, 10 days or so, and you'll have a super lawn. The best time of year to sow a lawn is either March and April, or the end of August, September into the middle of October. There's still sufficient moisture in the ground and sufficient warmth in the ground to germinate the seed. But the advantage that turf has got over grass seed is that you can turf at any mild period of the year. Probably not right in the middle of summer when it's too hot, because the turf will dry out too much. But bearing in mind that turf is more expensive, let me just walk and point out and tell you how much it would cost. With grass seed to about here, it would cost you a couple of quid or so, depending on your mixture. And you saw the amount of turf we put down for £5. There is advantages both ways. Grass seed is cheaper, takes longer to establish. Turf is more expensive, but you get a ready-made lawn. Pick the bones out of that and choose the method that you want to. But first of all, prepare this ground correctly. Very important. How to repair a worn lawn. They don't come much worse than this, do they? This was very good up to about 6 weeks ago. We had a party one night we also had a marquee up, and we had a lot of people here, and this is what's happened. But I can soon pull it round, because if we look here, it's been damaged badly, but all the young grasses are just starting to come, and I want to encourage these to come. The area of land has always grown grass very well, and it's been fed and looked after over the years. Just at this moment in time, very sad, but hopefully we can recover it. Let's just have a look, and I'll show you how I'm going to tackle this one. Lightly, just prick it through. It isn't as bad as I thought. Just in there. And that's all it needs. You'll think, it's totally ruining it, but I assure you this is the way to set about. I've made a mixture here. I made a mixture here of old grow bag compost and some nice garden soil. And we're going to rub the rake across it. And this grass here will actually, it's all rooted, and it will actually grow up through there. So we're not destroying anything. This has got a bit solid here, so I'm just knifing it with the back of the spade. And we're going to rub a bit of soil into there. But there's plenty and plenty of grasses trying to come. There's lots and lots of grasses germinating here now. So if I just rub that level again. Oops-a-daisy. Wonderful. I hope you got that, David. And on the front we just a little bit more seed there, like that. And then, for a fortnight, I'll cover that over with a piece of garden fleece, trap the garden fleece down so it doesn't blow away, keep my fingers crossed, and hopefully we might see grass again. Let's just have a look at one or two things that we should be doing to get the lawn in pristine condition for next year. Scarifying. What does that mean? It means this, look. And you can't do too much of this before you get out of breath. And what that does, it gets the old thatch out of the turf, and the thatch being the dead grasses and stolons which go across and make that hard pan, and that's an area where mosses develop. So by using the springbok at this time of the year, it gets all the dead stuff out of the way. And what I often do, when I've given it a really good combing all the way over, I get the mower out again, top it again, and all the rubbish goes into the grass box, and it's an easy way of removing it. Some people just brush it out of the way with a besom, but I mow it off. So that's scarifying, which gets rid of all the thatch and makes the grasses active again. The next thing you do at this time of the year for lawn care is to get the garden fork And this is a soil destroying job. Bang it in and make holes. Every 3 or 4 inches apart, all the way over your lawn. If your lawn is as big as this, you have a garden folk party and bring all your friends round, or you hire in a mechanical spiker, because you can get the mechanical ones. But if you've only got a small area to do, and you've plenty of time to do it, if you could do this to your lawn every other year, it lets air in, it makes the drainage better, it helps to alleviate moss, and when you've got a large area done, you then get a really good mixture of sandy soil. And we'll show you that in a moment. We'll just do another 2 or 3. And if your drainage is very, very bad, and the lawn is a lawn that's very spongy, you go farther down with the garden fork. I said earlier on that garden work beats all the jogging. By Jove, I'm getting the sweat on already. Right, just to get some mixture now. And what we do is we brush this in. What it is doing, it is actually pushing the soil down into these holes and refurbishing the soil structure of the lawn. Often it's necessary to actually redress the soil again after a shower of rain, because sometimes a piece of soil will get stuck halfway down the hole and it will get washed in and it'll leave a depression, so it's as well to just top dress it again, probably in 3 weeks' time. So to put it in a nutshell, autumn lawn care, after the last cut, you can go across with the springbok rake and remove all the thatch. When you've done this, spike the lawn either with a garden fork, or if it's a big lawn, go hire yourselves an aerating machine. When you've done that, brush in the compost, and this can be a fine compost with plenty of sand in, especially if your land is poorly drained, and then keep off the lawn for a while, and hopefully next year you'll have something that you'll be really proud of.